monoxide detector. Normally, I let my 2 cats sleep in my bed. You occasionally can feel them and hear them walking around and rearranging like normal. But a few days ago, I had an emergency surgery, and after coming home and laying down to rest, because I needed to lay in a specific way, and I'm in a lot of pain, I went ahead and kept both my cats out of the bedroom and closed the door. I ended up having an experience where I was laying on my side, facing the wall and a dresser, and behind my back in the center of the bed, I could clearly feel a slight indentation on the bed from what I thought felt like paw steps, whether a dog, cat, or even a very small spirit or something. I waited for a bit to see if it would stop. Then I felt it go down below my feet and start coming up the other side right in front of me. So before it got that high up, I spoke out and I said, "Please leave me alone. I'm trying to heal after surgery and I am in pain." The steps stopped for maybe 30 seconds before they started back up again. I then turned the flashlight on my phone, flashed the entire room just to make sure that no Houdini happened to sneak in. There is nothing visible in my room. So I turn the flashlight back off and I say out loud, "You are not welcome here right now. I need my rest and to work on my recovery, and this will not help me to feel better. Can you please leave now?" And it stopped. Then this morning, I'm telling my boyfriend about the encounter the previous night, and as I'm going through and describing everything in detail, all of a sudden I am slammed with a severe pain in my right temples. Then I tell him how strange that is, that I suddenly have pain in my temples, and I feel like this is causing it. I don't think it wants us to talk about it. Then he said to me, with kind of a spooked look on his face, at the same time that I was telling him about it, he also got the severe pain in his temples. I didn't want the pain to continue, so I just said out loud, "I'm sorry I spoke about you again. I will stop talking about you out loud." The pain went away. Any clue what I could be dealing with here? Well, some sort of entity, but I think it's kind of neat actually that it interacted with you so naturally, as if you were talking to a person, and it listened to you. I don't know, that's pretty spooky though. Spooky, 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 spooky. Next. So I know that this is going to sound cheesy and fake, but last night on Friday the 13th, me and my boyfriend were spending time together, and I thought, oh, let's go out to the woods by your dorm and look for raccoons and possums and other critters, because we both love animals like that. We both agreed and went to grab some dinner and then walked to the woods. It's about 10ish, and we're about 2 miles in, and I see this deer jump right over the path into the bushes, and I say, "Oh, it looks like a deer." And he looks for a good 5 minutes but doesn't see the deer, and I see it clear as day. But after that, we continue, and we're about 4 or 5 miles deep into this trail when my boyfriend says, "I run this trail every single morning, and I honestly have no clue where we are." And that kind of spooked me because it's pitch black and he has no clue where we are. So we see this path that takes a right, and we assume that it will loop around and take us back to the beginning so we can leave. I'm about 2 to 4 feet ahead of him. face with my phone flashlight pointing in the brush. And he comes around the corner and sees me and says, "What the fuck is wrong?" And I say, "Look," pointing the flash of my phone in the brush, and he's looking down, and I just say, "Look up." And he looks up, and all you see are these bright blue humanoid eyes about 9 feet up, staring at me. It was really skinny, but so tall, and you can slowly see it scanning from me to him. I make eye contact with it for maybe a minute until he grabs me and says, "We need to go." And the second he said that, the thing moves towards us in this crooked movement. FYI, it was like a grassy plains area with no trees in the area, just tall grass and bushes. So we walk slowly. I'm walking backwards as he has me by the wrist while he walks forwards, and you can just see this thing stalk us until we take the left turn and retrace our steps back out of the woods while we're walking/running. We were screaming prayers, and I don't know, it was just terrifying. And when we left, my body just kept telling me to go back into the woods, and I couldn't stop tearing up while just staring at the woods when we got out of it. Also, while we were leaving, there was this loud shriek or howl. I know this is speculation, but he said the name Skinwalker or Wendigo, and I was also whistling at the deer in the woods. I don't know. And we smelled this super strong odor, and it got dead quiet when we saw it. And the closer we got to leaving, the louder the wildlife got. Girl, that's a Skinwalker. About 1,000%. That's a Skinwalker. Walking crooked, making a shriek howl sound, the smell, the dead quiet. That's my diagnosis. Okay. I'm not a professional, but that's my opinion. Though that would be really, really terrifying to see something that tall stalk you like that. Are you freaking kidding me? I'd be out. Out. Okay. Thanks for your story. That's a great story. Traumatizing, I'm sure. Okay. When I was about 7, I was at my uncle's house upstairs when his oldest daughter called me into her room from the leading hallway. As I reached the door frame, I saw this huge, almost crimson, red, furry/fuzzy presence through the crack of her fully opened door. The door opens towards the room, so for this thing to be very tall and husky, it wouldn't make sense for it to fit behind the door. But I could just tell it was massive. I want to say the closest thing that I could use to describe it to the furry texture of this thing was similar to Sully from Monsters, Inc. The thing didn't have eyes, but I could tell it was looking down at me. Right after seeing it, I started crying and went to my cousin freaking out, checking behind the door and finding nothing. I don't know, maybe since I was literally 7 years old, it could have been a hallucination, but it just seemed so real, and it really stuck itself in my head for me to still think about it even now and then. I'm 22 years old now, and this thing is literally something I still can't explain. Has anybody ever seen anything similar to this vague description I could provide? I don't think a ghost would appear as big, furry, and red. Maybe a demon? I have never heard of anything quite like that in all the stories I've read. I can't think of another one that was like a big crimson monster. So weird, with no eyes. saw a duplicate of our friends, but it wasn't them. Me and my friend saw two versions of our friends at the same time, and then they disappeared. Bear with me. This is kind of difficult to summarize concisely, but I'm just putting this out there as I'm eager to know what this was or if anyone's had any similar experiences. Back when I was in high school, we were 4 friends. Me, R, T, and S. After school, we used to meet either at the local shops behind the school or T's house, as it was also close by, and her single mom used to work late hours, so we would have the house to ourselves. R and I were walking together, and we couldn't find T and S at the shops, so we decided to go straight to T's house, as we figured they would be there. T lived in a terraced house with a closed backyard and high fences and no way through apart from the front door. The garden was enclosed by neighbors' gardens on each side. As R and I were walking up the street, T's house was in sight, and we saw T and S at the door trying to insert the key in. R and I both looked at each other and shouted their names and waved. T and S turned to each other and quickly fumbled the key into the lock and ran inside. R and I looked at each other in disbelief because we thought this was rude. Like, what were they playing at? So we ran up the street and knocked on the door trying to get them to answer. About 2 minutes later, we see T and S walking casually up the street. When they got to us, we started berating them, thinking they were playing some kind of trick. They were both so confused, so we had to explain what we saw. They were adamant it wasn't them. And then T started getting super freaked out and crying, thinking someone was in her house. She called her mom, who said she was being silly, so we decided to go inside together. We went to the kitchen and grabbed some knives, super stupid, and searched the house thoroughly. There was no one there. We were all so freaked out. It was absolutely T and S that we saw. No mistake about it. 2 high school girls, same uniform. T is black and S is a ginger. There was no mistaking them. There was no way they could have gotten out of the house once they were inside without coming back through the front door, which we would have seen. All we could talk about after was how weird that was. I have no doubt in my mind that their reactions were genuine, and it wasn't them playing a trick on us. It's like we saw their doppelgangers, and they just disappeared. It gives me chills to this day. The more stories I hear about doppelgangers and mimics, the more freaked out that whole phenomenon makes me. It's just crazy. Like, how does this happen? That is so terrifying. Terrifying. Okay. Great story. Next. This next story will have a picture attached. Here we go. Okay, so this is kind of a poor drawing of what I saw, but still, honestly, very close. I used to have a twin house with my brother and his girlfriend on their side of a very short 4-house street with a dead end after my neighbor's front yard. One day, late in the evening, when I turned my car in my driveway, I saw this thing in the light beams of my car at the end of the street for like 3 seconds before it ran off in one giant jump. Behind it, on my drawing, there's a bent metal fence for cars what I saw, enough to know what it was, but I saw enough to know that it was nothing that I could know. Weird sentence, I know, but it sums it up pretty well. I remember perfectly its very round head, round back, and very thin, long legs and no neck. It had no ears, no tail, no hairs, with pinkish gray skin. I didn't see hooves, so I guess they were paws. I also kind of saw a bit of a long nose, but definitely not as long as like a dog's nose or something. It also had very big, round black eyes, and something that did look like a dog's snout. I stayed hidden in my locked car for at least 30 minutes with this very thin opening in my window so that I could hear if it got closer to me. But I never heard anything, and I never saw it again. I called my sister-in-law, asking her to bring their dogs inside and to unlock their door, waiting for me to run in. I'm not much of a runner in life, but I swear I made that distance faster than I thought I ever could do it. I told them all about it, and they had to believe me because of the panic in my eyes. But I understand it's still hard to. Even I have a hard time believing what I saw. To this day, I still have no idea what it could have been, and I think it's gonna bother me for the rest of my life. I don't think that I was supposed to see this. For reference, I live in the woods part of Quebec in Canada, with a native village on the other side of the river. It was too tall to be a dog, too thin to be a bear, no hooves, so it can't be a deer. Also, again, no ears or tail or long neck. Does anyone have any idea what the hell I saw? Maybe a hellhound. I mean, that would have a snout like a dog, but it would have paws. That's really freaky and scary. I don't know. Usually hellhounds, or creatures of hell, right, when they visit people or make their presence known, they communicate with their mind. Like they have mind-to-mind communication with whoever sees them. And it's usually horrifically terrifying for the person that's seeing them and hearing what they're saying. So, I don't know. I don't know if that tracks as a hellhound, but that's my first thought. That is so scary. And here's the picture. 3, 2, 1. Nothing I've seen before. I'm betting it's nothing any of you have seen before either. Freaky. Next. When I was younger, I was friends with this guy who lived in a fairly big, old house. I occasionally went around to hang out, but I'll never forget the time I stayed there overnight. We were playing games on his Xbox in his room, and it was quite late at night. I've always been into paranormal stuff, so naturally I was asking about his old house, as I know he's seen and heard things there. Anyway, he was telling me stories about his house, and he said he always keeps his door closed at night because he doesn't like the sounds he hears. I asked what he meant, and he told me that almost every night, at around midnight or just after, he hears footsteps coming up the stairs, and once it reaches the top, he hears more, but this time running directly at his room. His bedroom is at the end of the landing upstairs. He told me that he's never been said, try and keep the door open and see if you can handle it. So I challenged myself to that, and I decided to keep the door open to find out. It got later through the night, and eventually it reached midnight. A few minutes passed, and I began to hear those footsteps up the stairs. At first, I did think it could have been a family member, but I then realized they'd all gone to bed, and all of the lights were off outside the bedroom. I listened as it got closer, and it was like someone just walking up the stairs like normal, except when it reached the top of the stairs, there was nothing there. I could see the stairs from the bedroom. Moments later, I hear footsteps gradually running toward the bedroom, but I panicked, and I shut the door as fast as I could. I couldn't bear to see what could happen. To this day, years later, I still wonder what that could have been, and why almost every night that happened. I wish I could go back and do it again, as I think I could handle it a lot better now. But I'll never stop thinking about that experience. That is spooky, 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 spooky. Oh man, I don't think I'd spend the night there ever again. You know, with it happening every night, there must be something to that. Perhaps someone died right at that time, you know, and the energy is just left, replaying over and over and over again. That is freaky. I would not be able to live there. That would not be okay by me. Just saying. Just saying. Thank you for that story. You're very brave. Okay. This happened to me a couple of years ago. I was biking to work as per my usual routine, and I was at a crosswalk waiting to cross when I heard tires squealing. I was on my phone, but I managed to look up at the time to see this red pickup truck run a red light and slammed into a black BMW on the driver's side rear panel. The BMW spun violently and nearly flipped into the air. The tire was torn off and thrown into the parking lot, hitting a car. The red pickup knocked off his trajectory, sped towards the sidewalk, slamming into a light post. Thankfully, the three people there managed to flee before the pickup hit them. The impact was so loud and violent that there was debris everywhere, and yet aside from the car alarm from the damaged vehicle in the parking lot, everyone was quiet. I looked around at everyone's stunned faces before my EMT training kicked in. I took a class a few months prior, and while I didn't pursue that as a career, I did value the training that I received. I immediately took out my phone and dialed 911 as I told people to check on the driver, but not to move them. I relayed everything I saw with as much clear information as I could to the female operator. Then I heard a man shout out that there's a baby in the BMW. Oh, I felt my heart twisting up in fear and sadness, but managed to keep my composure. And I looked up to get the street names. And when I looked back for the wreckage, it was gone. No car accident. Nothing. Just like a regular, boring street. The 911 operator must have heard my confusion. I think I muttered something like, "What the fuck?" no car accident. She asked if I was okay, and I told her, yeah, I'm just confused. I apologized, and right before I was going to hang up, the accident happened. Just as I remembered it, every single detail, and probably even more since I saw it fully. The operator must have heard the crash over the phone and asked me if there was a car accident just now, and I said yes. And she sent the police immediately. I stayed on the phone with her for a few minutes as we both tried to figure out what the hell just happened. We were both very confused as to the situation and just decided to leave it behind us. I don't believe in the supernatural, and I for sure would have just dismissed this as a random, fleeting thought if it wasn't for the fact that I had a 5-minute call with 911 on my phone. I did stick around, and while the mom was pretty beat up, the baby was okay from what I saw when the ambulance took them. The red pickup truck driver was drunk, as evident by him trying to run and fight people who held him back until the police cuffed him. Oh man, that was a premonition. You saw the whole thing happen before it happened. That is bananas. That's so glitch in the matrixy. Glitchy. Super cool. Wow. That would have confused the hell out of me too. Wow. You had a vision. That's nuts. Okay. Next. This is just very short, but it comes with a picture. So, it says one night, not sure of the time, my dog started to growl toward the open bedroom door from the corner of the bed. I woke up and looked in that direction, and I saw a very heavy-set lady with cracks and what it looked like to be molten lava. ChatGPT created this image for me, and it's pretty dang close to what I saw. What is it? Here's the picture in 3, 2, 1. If I wake up and see that, I'm screaming bloody murder. And that just makes me shudder. Oh, I don't know what that is. Some crazy lava lady. We're gonna call her Lava Lady. Maybe it's a new thing. Maybe there'll be 10 more stories that have her in it. I don't know, but I've never seen anything like that quite so. Freaky, 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 freaky. Ew. Okay. Okay, we're gonna do one more glitch in the Matrix because I love glitch in the Matrix. I don't know why, I just do. I dig them. This one's pretty good, so here we go. Hi everyone. So this is something that happened to me and a friend of mine at a beach in southern France some years ago. So we were sitting on a bench close to the beach, And this place is quite busy when it's daytime, but very calm and deserted at night. Almost nobody there. Like we love to do on weekends or holidays. Me and my friend were just chilling, staring at the beach. Just a few city lights still up, not far from the beach, while smoking. It was around midnight, and at some point, we saw two people who looked like a 40-year-old, something dad, and his around 10-year-old daughter. We both still remember to this day clearly what they said when they walked past us. The girl, who seemed joyful, told her dad that she wanted churros, and her dad replied that she had already ate something not long ago. We were like, okay, weird. It's very rare to see people here at this time. And even weirder that the kid still was up and wanting churros at midnight when everything is obviously closed. But hey, nothing that strange. We just minded our business and kept smoking and chilling. 1 hour later, at 1 a.m., the exact same dad and daughter were just walking in front of us again. But what creeped us out a little is that they were saying the exact same thing as earlier. The daughter wanting churros and the dad telling her that she had already ate something not that long ago, with the exact same words. At least that's how my friend and I both remember it. We were kind of creeped out, but we just told ourselves like it might be some tourists who just love night walks. Weird for a kid this age, but hey. Oh, okay. The thing is, the exact same shit happened an hour later, around 2 a.m. And the exact same freaking conversation. The little girl wanting churros and her dad saying, no, you already ate not that long ago. Now me and my friend were just absolutely creeped out. We hesitated for a second and discussed whether or not we should try following them and talking to them. But my friend was very, very scared. He started to think those were ghosts and that we should not disturb them. So we just went back home, and funnily enough, we never chilled at this spot again since that day. Unlike my friend, I don't really believe in ghosts, so I am really interested to hear what your theories are on this. Maybe this was totally normal, but the exact same words and the fact that the dad was walking with his daughter this late still feels weird to me. What do you all think? Also, I really want to know if any of you went through something similar. Please share. It's pretty much the only weird or glitchy experience I've ever had in my whole life, and my friend would feel less alone if someone else went through it. Oh man. And one of the Reddit responders says, maybe the traumatic event occurred with them, and their spirits are repeating the story over and over again. Part of the story where they were still alive and happy, which is kind of what I was referring to before. Oh my god, if I witnessed that, that would throw me off. Oh my goodness. Girls and boys. Yeah, don't follow them. Do not follow weird, creepy, ghosty people. Just don't. Okay. Anyways. Okay. I think I'll end with this last story today. Here we go. In the summer of 2005, my friends Jake, Mitch, Xander, Trevor, and I decided to embark on what would become one of the most memorable, yet unsettling, road trips of our lives. We still don't know what happened to this day, despite researching every record in Montana and nothing ever came close to this town. As we were from Canada and didn't know the area, I moved into the United States in 2015, living several miles from where this incident occurred. Fresh out of college and fueled by the desire for adventure, we aimed to spend several weeks camping, sharing cheap beer, and exploring America's often overlooked corners. But this turned into one of the most terrifying decisions of our lives. We traversed the unknown, away from the hustle and bustle of Canada, which can be quite a lot sometimes. After a long day of hiking at Glacier National Park, we were invigorated and ready for our next destination. Instead of sticking to the main highways, we opted for a scenic back route, winding our way southeast. We weren't in a hurry and wanted to stumble upon some hidden gems along the way. Old diners, deserted gas stations, or perhaps even ghost towns steeped in their own eerie histories. As we rolled into this town, I forgot the name of it, late that afternoon, a peculiar stillness enveloped us. Jake was the first one to notice that everything was wrong about this place, and that we should have gotten out of there when we had the chance to. We were running low on gas, with just a quarter tank left, and the only sound filling our car was a jumble of static fuzz from the radio. A weathered green sign we passed offered no name, just an aura of mystery. At first glance, this town appeared to be a typical rural ghost of what it once was. Half-boarded up shops, rusted out pickup trucks, and a pervasive sense of apathy. The air felt heavy with nostalgia and decay, hinting at decades of decline, but something felt profoundly off. I was starting to get an uneasy feeling as someone was watching us, and I wanted everybody out of there. No one voiced their feelings at first, but we all sensed it. The streets were too empty. It wasn't the usual everyone's at work type of emptiness. It felt like a film set, perfectly manufactured for an eerie opening scene just before the director yelled action. Everything was too pristine, too still. Despite the presence of parked cars in driveways, toys scattered across yards, and fresh laundry flapping on the clotheslines, we didn't see a single soul. Xander was getting very unnerved and needed to stop himself from getting a panic attack. Jake nervously joked that it was reminiscent of the Twilight Zone, while Mitch countered by likening the atmosphere to the haunting town in Silent Hill just before the sirens went off. We pulled into an old gas station that seemed intermittent, as if they were struggling to stay alive, and noticed that it looked like one of those old-fashioned pictures, and it had an eerie feel to it. It felt like somebody was watching us through the window. After filling our car, we decided to drive around town, and the general store caught our attention. Curious, we decided to stop. Stepping out of the car, we were met with an unsettling silence. No wind rustling through the trees, no chirping birds, not even the soft hum of insects buzzing about. At this point, I was getting a little nervous about the whole situation, and I wanted to get out of there fast. Trevor grabbed the handle, and the door swung open, revealing an interior that looked inexplicably untouched. Xander pointed out something odd. The calendar hadn't been changed in numerous decades, and it still had the year 1912. At first I thought this was a museum or something, but I realized it wasn't. The shelves were stocked with items from long ago. Dusty bottles of soda lined the old ice chest, and cigarettes sat behind the counter, as well as some postcards that were faded and other souvenirs. A cash register that looked like one dated back to the early 20th century in a state of idle readiness. Yet there was no cashier present. No one, in fact, even acknowledged our arrival, and I was calm at this point and felt safe inside of the general store, or what we assumed to be. Against our better judgment, we decided to stay. As we made our way back to the car, an older woman appeared across the street. Her gaze fixated on us. To this day, I still have nightmares about this encounter with this person, as she stared at us with such hatred and malevolence. She was dressed in a faded blue dress, and she had an unnaturally stretched appearance. Her skin an eerie pallor, devoid of warmth, as if she hadn't seen the sun in years. Before we could react, another figure emerged. A barefooted man, no older than 30 years old, stood by a nearby tree, just watching. Soon after, more figures trickled out. 2 more near what I could guess was the town hall that was dilapidated, and a man in dusty overalls peering at us from the window of the post office. All of them stood there, unnervingly still, their eyes locked on us. No one spoke, which was the most terrifying and unnatural part about this whole incident, because we tried to say hello and other greetings, but nothing worked at this point, and I was starting to run back to the car with my friends. We hurried back into the vehicle, the atmosphere thickening around us, and as I turned the key into the ignition, the fuel gauge audibly plummeted from a quarter tank to empty, as if some unseen hand had flipped a switch. The engine, sputtering, refused to start. Panic set in. Jake, sitting in the passenger seat, abruptly pointed through the windshield, his voice trembling as he uttered the words that would haunt me. "They're trying to trap us. We need to get the hell out of here, and now." And at this point, my heart was racing, and I floored it as the car started rumbling, but it fizzled out. This is where things get weird. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the heavy air inside the store morphed into something oppressive, almost like the atmosphere itself conspired against us. I was trying my best to stay awake, and this is when everything went blank. Later, Mitch told me that our phones had long lost service, and any attempts to connect with the outside world resulted in nothing but static on the radio. Desperation propelled my friends to try leaving multiple times, but every time we dared to crack open a door, they were right there, their soulless eyes watching, as though they anticipated our every move. It was as if they were aware of our presence in a way that transcended normalcy, like they were hunting us, and everything they told me happened while I was passed out on the floor. At some point, either out of sheer exhaustion or the weight of fear, they succumbed to sleep, and when I awoke, an unnatural calm enveloped the gas station. It was conspicuously empty, with no townfolk, and we decided we need to get the hell out of there outside, the town appeared altered, almost grotesque. The buildings looked a shade more dilapidated, and the trees were even darker brown, as if age had battered them overnight. We wandered in confusion for what felt like eternity, until we eventually flagged down a trucker on a service road. His puzzled expression deepened when we mentioned the town. He responded slowly, each word making my heart sink further, saying there's nothing but forest beyond where we claimed it existed. No buildings or people, and the last time somebody lived there was in the 1910s. And we kind of believed him, but we were skeptical. At first we laughed, assuming he was just joking with us. But as time went on, the dread settled in. The laughter faded because our car was gone and was later found on the side of the road like it drove itself there, which never made any sense. Once we got back home, we tried to search for any trace of that town. We scoured the internet for information. We tried mapping it out. We even reached out to the Montana Department of Transportation. They responded with a bewildering assertion that no such road existed. None of what we experienced matched any historical records, and this town ceased to exist half a century ago. Since then, we've all drifted our separate ways. Mitch and Jake refused to discuss the events of that day, while Xander moved to Oregon and became a scholar in metaphysics. Trevor became a researcher into the paranormal, and on numerous occasions went on ghost hunts to find out the truth about what is happening between the world of the living and the dead. Sometimes I still dream of that town, not the people. The silence persists, and the unnerving hum in the air lingers, and the peculiar way the sky seems slightly wrong, as if its dimensions were just a hair too flat. That was so nicely written. I appreciate that. I hope